in the end.
By 2004, Japanese developer Yuke's had several successful wrestling games across both the PS2 and the GameCube, the 3 SmackDown games, and the 2 WrestleMania games, with both Day of Reckoning and SmackDown vs. Raw to join them. But despite all that, Aki had made some wrestling games with their own flair in the Def Jam and Ultimate Muscle games that same generation. Yuke's wanted a piece of that pie, but what were they to do? The answer? You make a game that essentially was the blueprint for Wonder Ring stardom, add some DOA-like sexiness to it, and voila! New wrestling game. That was the basis for today's game. It was announced by Konami in January 2004 under the name WWX Rumble Rose. It was actually a co-op effort that included Yuke's, Konami Computer Entertainment Tokyo, and Polygon Magic's VSL team. Polygon Magic helped develop / co-develop games like Galarian's Ash, 7 Samurai 20XX, Bleach Shattered Blade, and even helped port Ghost Squad to the Wii. With the initial announcement, only 2 wrestlers were revealed, but the game was still set to be familiar to everyone who played the main Yuke's wrestling games. This was in addition to providing their own flair to make this game stand out. There was also the promise of an ability to switch between heel and face personas depending on your playstyle. Konami revealed more information about the game in another press conference in May of 2004 in the build-up to that year's E3. They revealed more info that the game would have 11 characters, double if you count heel and face personas, would have several modes of play, including one that Konami Digital Entertainment America's product manager Rob Goff described as the ultimate fantasy for gamers, quote-unquote, but we'll get into that later on. They also went into further detail about the humiliation feature to help tear down opponents. This would be one of several features to help distinguish the game from Yuke's other wrestling games. Come E3 2004, Konami showed off the game with a playable demo of sorts under its final title, Rumble Roses. This pretty much affirmed what Konami outlined in prior press conferences. The wrestling also looked to mix both the WWE style and even more crazier styles seen in the Def Jam games. This even included mixing of some moves. Strong graphics were also promised in addition to realistic dripping effects. For a game that kinda came out of nowhere, it certainly was looking to shape up in many different ways. The game came along nicely, development went smoothly, and the game shipped on time. Rumble Roses, co-developed by Yuke's and KCET and published by Konami, was exclusively released on the PS2 on November 9, 2004 for North America, February 17, 2005 for Japan, and 1 day later for Europe. Rumble Roses, while it does keep much of the same action that made the WWE games from that generation enjoyable, there isn't much to sink your teeth into to keep you invested, at least in some ways. Rumble Roses has a few modes of gameplay. You've got your basic exhibition mode, which has several modes for you to choose from. A normal one-on-one match, a mud match, and title bouts. Wait, that's it? Yeah, despite being a wrestling game made by a company known for having many modes of play in their other wrestling games, Rumble Roses barely has any match types in it. There aren't any differences between the mud match and a normal match except for the attire the ladies wear, which for some reason includes heels. I don't get it. At all. The setting to a beach and the arena not being normal. While the arrangement does take away aerial moves like the moonsault and the like, not only can you get used to this, but you may not even need to use aerial moves and the like to win a match. Beyond that, not much. So really, this game only has one type of wrestling match when all is said and done. What are we, back in the NES days? No weapons match, although there are ways to get them, but I never figured out how. Also, no rope breaks, so every match is just no holds barred, I guess. No cage matches, no tag matches, no multi-man matches, nothing. Well, there is a title match mode, but it still uses the same one-on-one gameplay. The way it works is that you pick a character and you have to complete specific vows. You can either do vows that good guys do, or vows that the bad guys do. You select these before you do your match. Some characters are face by default and others are heel. There are 22 characters in total when counting both heel and face personas. You can keep doing vows that keep the face or heel personas, or you can do ones that will turn your specific character face or heel depending on their current alignment. When you've done enough vows in one-on-one matches to get 100% face or heel status, you can challenge the current title holder. This does unlock some stuff, but I'll get into that towards the end of the video. There are a couple other bonus modes. These include the gallery mode. This will allow you to pick a character and watch them. You can also learn more about them, hear voice clips of them, hear their entrance theme, and you can use the free camera to just look at them from any angle you want. If you let it sit for a minute, you'll get an interview with the girl you selected. The Japanese version will let you view various movies and artwork after completing certain conditions. There are all these other modes which are nice, but there's really only one main mode that ties everything together. Story mode. The plot is actually rather simple. Anesthesia, a mad scientist disguised as a nurse, holds a wrestling tournament with many female wrestlers entering for their own purposes. Think less of your typical season mode from the SmackDown games, and more like the story mode from Ultimate Muscle Legends vs. New Generation, only with just one-on-one matches, actual wrestling stuff to boot, and the lack of choosing who you get to fight. So it's more like Tekken's arcade mode. In fact, the wrestling backdrop with the wrestling elements is probably the best way to sum it up, but it's kind of more wrapped up like a fighting game, and this is the perfect segue into the gameplay. Rumble Roses pretty much plays similarly to the many Yuke's wrestling games from around this time point. You'll work to drain your opponent's stamina, then build up enough of a special meter, then unleash your finishing move, then hopefully pin them for the 1, 2, 3. Lather, rinse, repeat if they kick out until they get pinned or submitted. Anyone who has played any of the PlayStation 1/2 SmackDown games will almost pick up on this immediately. The game feels very different though with how matches are paced. Oh, you'll still do the standard stuff like punches, grapples, different types of them, submissions, etc. You'll do all that, but as where many of the SmackDown games are faster paced, intense, and really keep you on your toes, especially Here Comes the Pain, which this game uses a variation of that engine seen in that game, Rumble Roses is slower paced. This may change as you go to higher difficulties, but even then, the game has been somewhat simplified. There's no body damage icon, but you'll know which moves target which area since it tells you upon executing them. There's no blood as a result, but I guess that's a given. Not to mention as well, the camera angle is changed as well to where it doesn't face the entrance way. But the main thing in this regard is that there are less variety of moves. Oh, you'll still have front and back grapples and strikes, down grapples from multiple positions, moves off the turnbuckle, other aerial moves, etc. So what makes it simple? Well, you no longer have heavy versions of strikes and grapples. As a result, your moveset is more limited. To make up for this, there's an extra element to the submission system. See, if you only build up to one full bar, you can only use your main finisher. But if you build up to 2 bars, you can use what's called a humiliation move. When the bar has 2 specials stored up, the prompt to press the corresponding button will show. Press it and you'll perform a humiliation move. There really isn't much difference between this and a normal submission move. The only difference is that the amount of presses you need to break free. When trapped in a submission, mash the face buttons to get the number down to 0 before the meter empties. And the fan service. Lots and lots of fan service. This is mainly seen in the camera angles, which... Damn. Especially with the Japanese version, which will let you freely rotate the camera during these bits. You can only zoom in and out in the other versions. Alternatively, if you manage to keep enough offense on your opponent, a heart meter will show up and start to fill up. When it fills up, the girl will become humiliated, and you can perform a humiliation move if you have just one special stored. Just remember to hit the right button. Beyond that, if you played even one wrestling game in your life, especially on the PS2, you'll pick up on it easily. That aspect has not been lost in translation. Too bad the controls all had to be translated. Yeah, despite using the same engine seen in Here Comes the Pain, Rumble Rose's controls have been mostly rearranged. Strikes, grapples, and dash are all placed differently compared to Here Comes the Pain. Square for strike, triangle for grab, circle for pin, cross for dash. Yeah. Focus has been removed since only 2 people are in the ring at a given time. Moving and taunting are done with the left and right analog stick, respectively, just like Here Comes the Pain. Here there is a guard, and when holding it, press the strike or grapple button to counter the respective moves. The counter system here is simpler than in the Day of Reckoning games, and it works much better. You still have to time it properly, but it does work as it should. L1 is the normal finisher, while L2 is the humiliation finisher. R2 doesn't seem to be used at all, but I digress. Still, if you're playing this versus any other SmackDown game, you'll probably be fine with the controls. Any other veteran, it's going to take some time to get used to the controls, mainly the face button layout, and no, you can't remap the controls in any way, shape, or form, nor are there any options for multiple layouts. You can tell things have been simplified versus the SmackDown games. The graphics for this game are fine for the most part, but there are some inconsistencies with some things. Most character models do look pretty good. This is due to the fact that each model is made up of more than 10,000 polygons. Thus, just about every detail of the ladies from head to toe are well rendered, pleasant to look at, and they have nice animations for moves, taunts, and of course the jiggle physics. What did you think you were getting with a game like this? Despite this, not everything about the models is strong. Some of the muscles look a bit too aliased for my taste. They don't look as natural as they would in the mainline Yuke's wrestling games, and they tend to contrast with the smoother parts of the models as a result. Speaking of animations, many of them you'll see recycled from past SmackDown games. There really isn't much of a surprise here, but a little familiarity doesn't hurt here since they look good, I guess. The game also has its own unique animations. These consist of moves that look like if done improperly, they would seriously hurt somebody in real life. No, not a simple suplex, Ridge Holland. That aside, the animations look smooth. The realistic stuff looks pretty much like what you would see on TV. The unique animations stand out for how crazy they are, and on the whole, the game does look smooth. Even the normal animations for things like entrances really manage to show how quickly things evolve between this and the first three SmackDown games. They're very extravagant, and they fit each character well, and they're varied with how they look. The arenas do have some differences, but they're mostly just enough to be slightly different. You've got your standard Tokyo Dome-like stadium, a Coliseum-like one, a more typical smaller arena, and a beach arena unlocked by a cheat code. There are other technical things like the crowd not looking as good as they should, but I guess that's a given here. But objects like the ring, weapons, barriers, and every other thing regarding this does look good, well modeled, and yeah. The game's aesthetics also work very well. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of fan service in the game. You see this immediately in the characters seen in the game. We have Reiko, the sort of standard wanna be the strongest in the world type wrestler. On the other hand, Rowdy Reiko is the aggressive leader of a biker gang. Makoto is the typical judoka, but her alter ego, the Black Belt Demon, is an eviler geisha looking take any opportunity to win like MJF type of girl. Evil Rose seems to have suffered the worst of Anesthesia's brainwashing, which really makes her not only look evil, but also really into BDSM. Noble Rose is pretty much the polar opposite of that. Bloody Shadow's more of an evil, seriously sexy ninja, but Judgment seems to loosen up a little bit more. Eigel is a naive rural girl curious about this new journey she's on, but Great Khan is just a straight-up evil geisha. Dixie Clemens is your typical cowgirl, while Sergeant Clemens is a tongue-in-cheek, bad girl cop. Candy Cane is a naughty schoolgirl, while Becky is the typical blonde cheerleader, and she may have served as an inspiration for Juliet from Lollipop Chainsaw. Miss Spencer is the typical teacher, but Mistress Spencer is pure dominatrix. Anesthesia is the evil doctor pretending to be good, while Dr. Cutter just doubles down on this. Aisha is the typical pop star, not unlike Christina Aguilera, with some looks based on Beyonce, while Showbiz is Aisha, but with the bad side of every pop diva out there. Trust me when I say there is someone for everyone. Beyond that, the animations for when the girls are being sexy really are, well, something. I mean, the outfits, the beach environments, the angles for interviews and the like, especially in certain outfits. You can tell Rumble Roses knows it's sexy and doesn't give a fuck if you like it or not. This may not appeal to the average wrestling fan, but anime fans who love fan service stuff, you'll be right at home. Yet oddly enough, even though the actual game is loaded with sex appeal to help it stand out, the actual rest of the aesthetics feel more like an atypical wrestling game. I get that it's still in that realm, but it just feels so normal compared to the characters. And heck, with the exception of a couple of stages, the game just... it kind of clashes in a way. Normal with fan service. Let's just say the only other thing that's going to stand out are the ads for other Konami games you see in the background of some stages. Metal Gear Solid 3, Castlevania Lament of Innocence, Neo Contra, and Gradius 5. Someone help me get that last one, please. On the whole, it feels like the ladies are playing a normal wrestling world, or inside a normal wrestling world, I should say, outside of 2 stages. The sound design is pretty typical for a game of this nature. The music in the actual matches is the typical generic rock seen in the Yuke's wrestling games from this era, even the ones not made by Yuke's. Anything I've said about the in-game music in my WrestleMania 19 review pretty much applies here, with the exception being the entrance themes. This is where the game's music really shines. Not only is there a decent amount of variety in the types of songs here, from pop to rock and the like, but they also really fit the characters to a T. The main standout is Dixie Clemens' theme, and the game's intro theme itself. A surprisingly good cover of David Lee Roth's Yankee Rose. Don't be surprised if you get some of these songs stuck in your head, or you get the need to listen to one of them over and over again. The English voice acting is kind of bad. It's the bad side of cheesy. The kind that can only be determined by English voice actors doing work for a Japanese game while living in Japan. The voices are fine, for the most part here, but some of the lines, the delivery of some of them, it might actually make you laugh at something they so badly think you should take seriously. Then again, if you actually do, you might not be relaxing the way the game wants you to. Also, I swear I keep seeing certain names pop up when this happens. Reiko's voice actor is Bianca Allen, who voiced Tomo in Fatal Frame and Yuriko in Bloody Roar 3. Lene Hart, voice of Bloody Shadow, voiced the titular character in Musashi Samurai Legend, but you may also know as her voicing Anna Williams in a couple Tekken games, as well as being the Crazy Pride Lady. The voice for Candy Cane, Peggy Wu, also did work in Michigan Report from Hell, another Japanese game with hilariously bad English voice acting. Same with Miss Spencer's voice actress, Rachel Walzer. In general, several voice actors here collaborated in some games from around this time, including but not limited to Shenmue 1 and 2, Glass Rose, Baten Kaitos 1, and Michigan Report from Hell. Yeah. Is it any wonder why the voice acting is the way it is? There is a decent amount of unlockable content in the game, but you have to grind quite a bit to get it. There are unlockable costumes for beating story mode with specific characters, alter egos, and gallery mode for each of the girls and their alter egos. For normal gallery mode, win the title as any character, and defend the title as any character will unlock the beach equivalent. This means going through the vow system with everyone and their own alter egos just to get these unlocked. Even worse, in the US version, you can't even use the alter egos freely in exhibition mode, even if you beat story mode with them. I know I make a big deal of replayability in my reviews, but this is one of those instances where I draw the line because it becomes just too damn tedious. You can use a code in the Japanese version upon doing so, but not anywhere else. The beach arena can be unlocked with a cheat, and beating story mode with everyone unlocks Lady X and Lady X Substance. It sounds like a lot, but in reality it's only padded out because it's just you doing the same for different characters. Other than what I mentioned, there really isn't much. Rumble Roses does have some fun to offer with its gameplay. It looks good, sounds good, controls well, despite having a slightly different control scheme compared to other Yuke's wrestling games, succeeds in its style, and has some decent replayability. However, much of that replayability and unlockable content feels padded out. There's not much actual modes outside of the main ones. Shocking for a wrestling game made by Yuke's. There are some minor graphical hiccups regarding character models and the mud match. And the number of discrepancies between the Japanese and American releases is staggering, especially not being able to freely select between alter egos and having to use the vow system just to place them, while locking out the other ego for the time until things get shifted back to the way they used to be. Given that there were 3 months between the two versions, it seems as if this is no coincidence. It's like the game was rushed out to meet the Christmas of 2004 deadline in America, which, given Konami and their track record, that wouldn't surprise me in the least. On the whole, there's really not much meat on the bone to sustain this game. It's as if Konami still had an overall death grip on how the game itself was designed, and they only brought in Yuke's just to implement the wrestling part of their vision. But the thing is, Yuke's games often have many types of wrestling matches and all sorts of other stuff. Seeing this, it somewhat feels like a step back from the company who made Here Comes the Pain a year prior and still put out many solid titles in the years after. A game that is still often regarded as one of, if not the best wrestling games ever made. Rumble Roses only has a fraction of what Here Comes the Pain has to offer, with more pervy fan service. Does that make it bad? No, far from it. The right audience will definitely enjoy it, but hardcore wrestling fans, you may want to look elsewhere. And if you already have, well, I guess you could do worse, even if its $30 price point is a bit too steep given what it offers. I give Rumble Roses a 3 out of 5. Yes, I know there is a sequel, and yes, I have it, but I'm gonna have to see when I'm gonna get around to it, so yeah, thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, click the big red button below to subscribe. Check out the other links in the description for more cool stuff, and check out the playlist on screen for more content. See you in the next video.